We are now live.
Good afternoon and welcome to our panel this afternoon. I am Dr. Christa Gilliam. How are you doing, Capt family? I am an assistant professor in the Department of Social Work, the College of Behavioral and Social Sciences. I'm so delighted to be here with you all. This is Social Work Month. It's also Women's History Month. And so what a great opportunity to be able to come and talk to you a little bit about an extension of what we started in Black History Month, which is the Black family. The panel today is a discussion of the impact of military deployment on the Black family. And we have a distinguished panel that I am so excited to hear and learn from today.
What do you need help with?
If we can ask people as you come on to mute yourself in case you're not muted, that would be helpful. We are so used to doing these panels and discussions in person, so the opportunity to do it virtually has allowed us to have guests that are all the way on the West Coast and all around us. So we're very excited about this panel today. I want to thank those who made this possible: the Division of Academic Affairs, the Division of Student Affairs and Enrollment Management, the African American History Celebration Committee, with a very, 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 very special thank you to my colleague and our moderator for today, Ms. Janelle Harris. The members of the panel, we thank you for taking your time out today to come and share with us your experiences and some opportunities to tell us all how we can work better to support our military families. Dr. Gary Jones, my colleague in the social work department, who's also serving on the panel today. And of course, everybody who is a part of the Capt family knows that we would have not survived this pandemic without the support and help of our IT team and department. So I want to shout out and thank Ms. Kelly Jackson and Mr. Robert Harper for everything that they do behind the scenes to help us stay and be great. And also a thank you to Dr. Errol Bolden, also a colleague in the social work department. So we want to get right into the discussion. I'm going to introduce our moderator. Our moderator for today is Ms. Jennifer Harris. Ms. Jennifer Harris was born in Washington, D.C. and raised in Tuskegee, Alabama. I'm going to have to learn more about that. That sounds very interesting. Isn't that an interesting convo? She began her career here at Capt State University in 2003. I'm happy to say that career started in social work. You know, we have a reputation for being the best department on campus, and she is evidence of that. Prior to her work as an assistant registrar in academic affairs, she works, one of her roles, she has several roles, but her primary role and one of her favorite roles, I would say, is as a school certifying official for all things, and that's in caps, all things military and veteran and related. And she is such a resource for us to have here at the campus. And that's why I'm glad she agreed to moderate the panel. She received her bachelor's in 2001 and her master's in 2003, both from Morgan State University, and both of those are degrees in communications. In 2018, she earned a master's degree in project management from the University of Maryland University College. Some personal fun facts about her, some personal proud moments. She is also a military service veteran member. She was active and also an active reserve duty in the U.S. Army. So we thank her for her service. We thank all of the members of this panel for their service. She is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. She is a member of the Mount Olive First Baptist Church. Some of the things that she enjoys is traveling and cooking. I know she cannot wait until we can get out of here and travel somewhere. This panel is about family. She comes from a large extended family. Y'all, she got 5 brothers and she is the only girl and she is the oldest. And then she is also a mom. She's a mom of 3 children, a daughter and a son, and primarily a single mom. So we want to thank Ms. Harris for her support of this panel. We will again want to thank the panel. We want to thank you all for joining us. And without further ado, Ms. Jennifer Harris.
Thank you, Dr. Gilliam, for that introduction. And we're going to move right into other introductions of our panelists. With us today, we have Lieutenant Colonel retired Annette Brown. We have Captain David Ogin, who is all the way in Hawaii. We have Lieutenant Britany Jackson, who is in California. We have Mr. Vaughn Hill and Mr. Robert Baskerville. And we want to welcome them to this panel discussion. At this time, I would like to have each of them introduce themselves to you, share a little bit about who they are, their name and their rank, their branch of service that they served or is currently serving, their jobs while they are in the military or was in the military, their family status, and anything else that they would like to share with us. And we'll start with Lieutenant Colonel Annette Brown.
Hello, as you know, my name is Lieutenant Colonel retired Annette Brown. I served in the United States Army for almost 29 years, and I am happily retired. I hail from Long Island, New York, and I'm a 1983 graduate of Morgan State University in the Mighty Bear Battalion ROTC program there. During my military service, I've had jobs as platoon leader, commander at the captain and major level, followed by many staff levels as a logistician planners. I received my master's degree in 1995 from the Florida Institute of Technology in logistics and business management. My status is single, and like Jennifer Harris, my hobbies include cooking and traveling. My goal is to travel to all 50 states and every country before I leave the earth. And I'm well on my way to doing that. My two best trips have been Africa and Israel, and I have many more to add. And that's my introduction in a nutshell.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Captain David Ogin.
Hi, how's it going, everyone? So my name is Captain David Ogan. I'm currently, a captain in the United States Army. I was first stationed here in Hawaii as my first duty station, and that was in 2018. And since then, I've had a job as a platoon leader, a rifle platoon leader, also a executive officer, and now I'm currently the battalion movement officer. And moving forward, I will be going back to school to get my PhD in clinical psychology. As of right now, I've had one operational deployment to Thailand and a few rotations back and forth to ROTC in Louisiana. My family status right now is I'm currently married and actually expecting my first baby this summer. So that's exciting. Just a fun fact, I graduated Compton State in 2016, and I was a member of Iota Phi Theta Fraternity, Fall 14. I also completed some advanced degree in the Department of Psychology, more specifically rehab. But other than that, if you have any questions, just let me know.
Thank you, David. Next, we will have Lieutenant Britany Jackson.
Hello, everybody. I'm Lieutenant Britany Jackson. I'm my first lieutenant now. I am an Army nurse. I just graduated from Capt back in 2018. I commissioned from Morgan State the same year in May of 2018. I'm also in school right now for family nurse practitioner at Wilkes University in PA. And I graduate in 2023. And my current family status, I have no kids, no husband.
Thank you. Thank you, Brittany. Next, we will have Mr. Robert Baskerville.
Hello, everyone. I'm Robert Baskerville. I am a veteran of 4 years from the Marine Corps. I had the title of corporal, and the SME for my job was basically inventory management. I'm presently and will formerly be done with the Maryland National Guard as of April. I hold the title of E4. I am a petroleum oil and lubricant specialist, which is basically, I always call like a glorified fuel attendant, something like that. Somebody that deal with gas and lubricants, stuff like that. I'm currently a CSU student, a junior. I'll be graduating in the spring of 2022. I'm a future agent of change. I'm an agent of change right now because I want to be able to, help make change in people's lives for the better. What was the other questions? You said with like family dynamic or something like that? Presently, it's just me, myself, my spouse, and my I guess future mother-in-law. As far as right now, I think that's pretty much it. That's all about me.
Thank you, Robert. And you're a social work major, correct?
Yes, correct. I am a social work major, and I guess you can call me a double veteran as well. I guess since I'm from the Marine Corps and the Army.
Okay. Thank you. Good fun fact there. And lastly, but certainly not least, Mr. Vaughn Hill.
Hello, everyone. My name is Vaughn Hill. I was a specialist in the United States Army. My job title was 92 Alpha. That was a logistical specialist. Basically, like, warehouse, And my family status right now, I'm married with 2 kids. I'm currently a senior psychology major, planning on, grad school real soon.
Thank you, Vaughn. So as you all can tell from our panelists, we have a range of experience through branches, through ranks, and through deployments. So we're going to just get right down to our discussion. Thank you for those introductions. Okay, so our first question. Families face a number of challenges before, during, and after deployments. Do you think that Black families properly address or have a safe place to express their feelings and experience with their loved ones when they're overseas or just away from them, period?
Safe space.
How comfortable are they for being able to open up and disclose about fears, about things that they're going through with their family, or even if not with their family, with their superiors?
I think I could get started on that. For me, I've been through about 3 different battalion commanders, and I would say it depends on the leadership. My first battalion commander, I would not have brought anything family related to him, just simply because he was training focused and didn't care as much. So if I was struggling with anything, communicating with my family or anything like that, I wouldn't be able to bring that to my first battalion commander. My second battalion commander, completely different dynamic. He was all about family first. Every deployment would have a town hall meeting, and families were invited to be part of that town hall meeting, and it would literally lay out everything we're going to be doing by timeline. And he also provided additional support for guys who are struggling with, anything family related. My current battalion commander, he's kind of in between. He's been here for about 3 months now, so hasn't really gotten time yet to settle into his philosophy. But I predict he would be kind of like the last battalion commander. So I would say for me, it depends on the command climate, like what the command climate's like. But I'm usually a person that doesn't like to bring a lot of family matters into my professional career. And I would say that that's a weakness, because the more your family knows, the better, especially about your job like this that's rapidly changing. But I've been a kind of like a private person for so long. But I would say in this profession, you have to sacrifice a little bit of that and give a little bit more transparency. because it helps when your family knows everything. They're part of like the FRG. They're keeping them updated and things like that. So I would say for me, it depends on the command climate, on how I communicate with my superiors about my family.
I have a follow-up question to you, David, but I want to give the panelists an opportunity to respond to the same question, but I have a follow-up question for you. Anyone else?
Yes, I would like to say I agree with Captain Ogan. It definitely depends on your leadership at your unit organization. As far as, I guess, with deployment, I want to say that many of your colleagues within your unit that you work with are more so for that soldier, not really for the family. I'm sure they have resources. They have resources for families to reach out to in case they need help with anything dealing with the communication. But it's kind of a double-edged sword. With me being a Marine Corps and also being an Army, so active duty is a little different from National Guard completely. But as far as my first deployment with the Marine Corps, I didn't have any I guess kind of family attachments, so to speak. It was just me out in California or Japan, wherever I was deployed to. Well, Japan was where I was deployed. It was just me and then my fellow Marines with me. That's who I had for support with any issues that I had. Family support was very limited because I was still working on that whole communication dynamic with my family, because my family has become very distant. It became the norm for our family to not talk for like almost a decade. Only now, because of the pandemic, we were able to break that curse or that barrier that we had with communication. Now I talk to them every day. They can't stop calling me. But before then, for that whole 4 years, I had no communication with my family, really, only I guess for monetary reasons or if something was an emergency. Now with the Army National Guard, now that I'm closer to home, I have a lot of extended family, my God family, friends who I consider family. Now they have really expressed their concerns about me deploying. I just recently got back from a deployment from Poland. So now they really expressed that they don't ever want me to leave ever again. Before, I would never hear anything about it because they were so gung-ho on trying to be supportive for me that they never really expressed their feelings or concerns for me going somewhere that was so foreign to myself and, possibly to our country. But I think communication is the key factor is when it comes to deployments between that soldier or that Marine or that airman or that corpsman and their family. That communication has to be established first before one can be established with the family and the unit, because there are many dimensions that would not really help that family with that unit if there's no bond between that individual soldier and that family first.
Anyone else?
I'd like to chime in.
Mm-hmm.
Before I answer, though, I'd like to point out that there's a lot of social workers on this panel because my degree from Morgan is also in social work, since I didn't point that out in the beginning. But, and that's a good thing. But I also like to point out that while in the military, I have 4 deployments. My first one was as a gun-ho senior parachutist with the 82nd Airborne, going to Desert Shield, Desert Storm. And I had not been on any deployments before that. And as a single person, my family was scared to death. My mother came to visit me a lot before I left, and she was there the day I left and got to meet my battalion commander. And like some of the others said, my battalion commander was very supportive and promised my mother that he would leave with me and come back with me, and that he did. We were on the same plane when we left and when we returned from Desert Shield, Desert Storm. I like to fast forward to the other 3 deployments where I went to I-4, which is Bosnia, I went to K-4, which is Kosovo, and then I went to OIF. During those deployments, there was none of that camaraderie within the unit. And the primary reason for the last one is because I was an augmentee that went by myself. So there was really no connection between me and the unit I was going to and the unit that I was leaving from in my family. Because the people I worked with were pretty much saying, okay, you have orders, we know you're going. My family was in another area, and the unit that I was going to was another completely different entity. So there was no connection with any of that. I basically just had a set of orders saying go. Now I'm gonna go back to my first deployment where there was some opportunities to have phone calls and keep family members informed. But as the only person in my family gone into the military and away from home, my family worried a lot. So in my situation, I thought the best thing to do was to tell them as least as possible. Basically to let them know I was safe and I was okay, where I was and how things were going. As far as the bombings and going forward and fighting and all that other stuff, I pretty much kept it quiet throughout all my deployments. Because like I said, my family, they worry a lot. I knew what the risks were. My brothers and sisters would say every TV on the house is on CNN. So you had to pick and choose what information you really wanted to share and how much you wanted to share. But, you know, I think each deployment is different, and the units are also different in how they deal with you and your family members. I believe as a single person, you don't have as much as that family interaction with your military members as if you have a spouse, because there's different support groups when you have a family member or children and a spouse that interact more on that level. So I'm gonna let someone else speak.
Thank you. Anyone else? Lieutenant Colonel Brown, you spoke on some you brought up some really good points. And I was just thinking, I am a veteran, but I also had the privilege of being a dependent also. And I will say that, speaking from both experiences, as a soldier, I can remember having those leaderships, leaders who understood, and then some said, oh no, you signed up for this, and they were less compassionate. As a dependent, we had the church in my community. I was at Fort Riley, Kansas. We had the church, but then we had first sergeant. First sergeant wives generally stepped up when the unit was deployed, and they would offer as much support and lead us to resources when we felt comfortable enough to share, you know, or be transparent about our struggles. And there was some real struggles during that deployment of our spouses. Okay, so we're gonna move right into the next question.
Can I make one quick comment about
Certainly.
what you just said?
Yes.
During my first deployment, I had a death in my family, so I had to come home on emergency leave. And in my company, we had a family support group that where the wives got together and discussed things. And so while I was home on my emergency leave, I happened to meet with the wives that were in the family support group to give them an update on what was going on and talk to each one of them about their husbands who were deployed with me, and show them exactly where we were on the map so that they can have some type of identification as to where their spouses were.
Okay. So here's my next question then. Do you feel that you were given through your command the types of resources that you needed for managing stress or challenges that service members often face when they are deployed, such as sleep deprivation, PTSD, sexually related things, because all of this is real. All of this makes us who we are and takes us away from those things that we are used to getting, being in families or in relationships. in our normal settings. So in deployment, you're pulled away and you're on a whole nother mission that takes you away from those things that you are freely doing in a normal situation.
So you were saying that basically with everything that was taken away, were there resources given to us to, I guess, battle any stress or
To
any
help you manage.
challenges? Okay.
Yes, yes.
There were with the command that I'm with now, I had NCOs that was there for me to be able to talk to in case I had any issues or any situations that may come up. They did everything within their power to help me, and I didn't really have any really major issues. Mostly communication back and forth at home, but that was I guess alleviated with then we had like the USO, where I was able to go to USO and do FaceTime there in case my cell phone reception was horrible wherever I was. So there are resources, but I don't think that soldiers really take advantage of them as much as they should. It like you get a brief about all the resources that are there for you, and then the next moment it's out. It goes through one area and out the other, and now they're just dealing with these challenges on their own, and their problems are never really voiced because they keep them to themselves, and then things blow up to a bigger situation. And by the time that situation is so huge that by that time it's I guess it lost the ability to be able to tackle it from when it was small, because now it's too big to handle, and that soldier gets sometimes left behind because of it, or it's like kind of complicated. It's kind of complicated to really explain. Like the reasons are there, but it's you have like this mindset. Your mindset is completely different when you're deployed. When you're at home, you're this person that your family know or your friends know. But when you're deployed, I know for sure for myself, my mindset completely changes. Like it changes depending on the environment that I am around. So I don't. I address certain concerns with my leadership, and I also keep a lot of things to myself to alleviate any frustration between me and my colleagues, because they're still technically they're supposed to be like a brotherhood and a sisterhood. They're supposed to be like family, but it's also limitations on what you can communicate because you're afraid of any implications that might be placed upon you because of those situations you're having. You're supposed to be a soldier. You're supposed to never show weakness. You're supposed to always be strong, even in adversity. And it becomes difficult to communicate frustration sometimes. I know now the world's changing, and a lot of things are changing socially to where you're able to, but it's still that comfort level you have to have, especially if you have been to unit after unit after unit and you don't have that trust.
Anyone else?
Yes. Yeah. Well, there is resources that you have, but it's different between deployment and at your regular duty station. You know, because I've been to behavior counseling. You know, at Fort Bragg, that's where I was stationed at. You know, when I went to Afghanistan, you don't really have that professional help that you need. You can talk to your NCOs, talk to your friends, but they're not really professional. Like, you know, they can't really tell you how you really feel because, you know, they just probably tell you what you want to hear in that situation because, like, they probably dealing with stuff on their own. You know, so yeah. So I had both opportunities in both of them, Afghanistan and regular duty stations. Like he said, it definitely is opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Some people don't take advantage of it, but I did at times. You know what I'm saying? Nothing's wrong with that. Everybody break down at some point. You know, you just be strong.
Sure. Anyone else?
I like to say that I'm happy to see that the military has come a long way in providing services to service members because it's badly needed. And I believe at a time when myself and probably Jennifer was in the military, you know, there weren't a lot of resources and there wasn't a lot of identification of battle stress and battle fatigue and those other things. And oh, by the way, if you were an officer, and particularly in the 82nd Airborne Division, you didn't go on sick call as an officer.
Yeah.
You know, that was the stigmatization that was attached to officers.
Mhm.
You know, you can make sure that your soldiers were taken care of and that they went to see about themselves, but you had to keep pressing on. So I just want to say that I'm very happy to see how far treatment of service members have come.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak on that. That's actually what I wanted to talk about. I think it varies. As an officer, the resources they're the same, but they're different. And the way I say that is, I couldn't necessarily use the same resources that my soldiers were using. Like primary example she gave was sick call. I've had plenty of times where I would have an injury and just kind of nurse it back, you know, by myself, because you don't want to be that officer going to sick call. But I would say that for my soldiers, what I always did before every deployment is I put them on a glide path. It's usually a 12-week glide path. In that process, what we do is first thing I always focus on is finances and power of attorney. That's like the biggest issue soldiers will have on deployment is not being there, and especially being like the primary head of household. Finances kind of you know, take a dip. So what we do is a lot of classes where we call folks from AAR, and we do a lot of classes, and we set up appointments with Jack so they can do power of attorney, so they don't have, and they can have a transfer of financial responsibilities to their next of kin, so they don't have to worry about that as much. In addition to that, we do a run clinic, and where we get the soldiers physically ready, and we also do we also give them appointments with the chaplain. I say the chaplain because it's a little, there are two different perspectives between, especially in the infantry, between going to see the chaplain and going to see a psychologist. It's less of an impact when you go to the chaplain. So I give the soldiers, you know, that opportunity. It's always there, you know, but you know, during that 12-week, I stress that they go see the chaplain, because what you have when the deployment is coming up is an influx of soldiers going to either sick call or behavioral health, and which honestly I think most of the times is valid, but there is a perspective of a soldier trying to get out of a deployment and they don't really get the help that they need. So that's what I did as a leader. But from an officer's perspective, it's just expected that you are okay, if that makes sense.
You know, I'm glad to hear that several of you are mentioning the mental health piece. Mental health is a growing concern, whether you're in the military or not. However, do you all feel that the military or your leadership in the military that they are actively educating you all about the warning signs or the triggers that they might see that would help people to better manage in their families, in their units, on deployment? You know, what type of help or resources are you all being led to when it comes to mental health concerns?
From my perspective, no, they're not doing a good job with mental health, and just generally how infantrymen are. Just getting help is, there's a certain perspective with that. That's why people never really do it, especially with going to either behavioral health. For me personally, I see the chaplain once a week, and no one in this battalion knows that I have that appointment once a week. It's just that's what I do. But as far as like our soldiers, when the soldier needs help, my experience is in the battalion I'm in right now, it doesn't usually come up until it's a little too late. It becomes more of an administrative action versus it being a preventative action, if that makes sense. So now you're punishing the soldier, or you're giving him administrative action because of his mental state. having the soldier on lockdown because of suicide ideation. So I don't think we do a good job at that, which is why one of the reasons why I'm going into the clinical psychology role. I think we can improve that a lot, because right now, if I pull 4 specialists in here and tell them, hey, how do you know if your battle buddy needs help? None of them will be able to tell me. Like, how do you know if your battle buddy's, having too much substance abuse or problems at home? None of them will be able to tell me anything. So no, we don't really do a good job, at least from my perspective.
Anyone else?
I have a comment. When I first came into the military, I don't remember seeing any behavioral health services. And if there were some, I believe they were probably at the medical command level. So they were so high up, they were out of reach for the people who had the boots on the ground. Mm-hmm. So at that time, the only option, and probably the best option you had, was referring people to see the chaplain. But I want to point out that the chaplain really is not skilled to handle some of the behavioral issues that the licensed psychologists and social workers, or what have you, psychotherapists, etc., to deal with some of the mental health issues that service members have. Mm-hmm. One thing I am happy to say, during my first 3 deployments, there was no issue or mention of mental health or anything, but after I came back from OIF, there was a mandatory screening of everybody that returned from that deployment that came back with me, and that came back through the same port of entry that I arrived at and departed from. So I was very happy to see the social sciences personnel there in the room when we came back. So I would say that in that instance, we've come a long way from the way they used to do things. Mm-hmm. And we also need to talk about taking the stigma away from mental illness from soldiers, because it's a lot of it out there.
It's a lot of it out there. I agree. And David mentioned earlier that the reason why many elect to go see the chaplain is because it's less punitive. No, they're not always the best for trying to get some sort of real help, but because it appears to be a form of help, it is less punitive. And so to that statement, I would like to, yes.
Ms. Harris, may I say something?
I like to point out, though, during my first deployment, we had a chaplain assigned to my unit, and she was the most toxic chaplain I had ever seen in my life. Yeah. She was going back telling our battalion commander everything that the soldiers told her in confidence. It was horrible. It was a horrible experience. Yes. So, yes. I believe there are some good chaplains out there, but I believe in order to get the right help, and not only that, let me point this most important fact out, to have it documented in your history and your records of military service, you need to see a behavioral health person, because that also affects the type of care you get out when you leave the military.
Exactly. Thank you for that piece. Yes. Was that Brittany wanting to speak? Yes, Brittany.
So I was going to say, I know Lieutenant Colonel retired Brown stated that she got her and her company got screened right after deployment. However, what we're seeing on the clinical side is that some of the stresses of deployment is 3 to 6 months post, right? Or even up to a year. So as far as initiatives to push for support of mental health, especially for soldiers just coming back from deployment, having screenings done 3 months, 6 months to a year after deployment can help with that.
Okay, good point. Thank you for that, Brittany. So based on that conversation, I just want to know from any one of you, in what ways would you say that the media either helps or hurts how the military life or deployment is viewed?
Oh, it's definitely stigmatized. Definitely stigmatized. traumatized. I believe as far as like deployment, like, you know, dealing with your family or loved ones when you do leave, it's very negative, you know, and unfortunately, maybe the family may not know as much and what to expect when a soldier does get deployed. So I feel like social media does not have a good connotation as far as when someone gets deployed at all.
Thank you, Brittany. Anyone else? Robert?
Yes, I agree with Lieutenant Jackson. Well, could people media? Lord Jesus. I definitely haven't heard or witnessed anything positive whenever a soldier or anyone is going on deployment. It's always negative, especially depending on who's your president at that current moment. It's like they don't I don't want to say, well, I guess from a certain aspect that from the civilian and the military, there's a different mindset. Like despite who my commander in chief may be, I have this like, I don't know, mechanism. It's like this sense of duty to, you know, as far as being in the armed forces. Like I signed a contract. I understand why I signed it. This is my duty. That's all I see. I don't always stick to the negative part of what the deployment might mean. Cause I'm not privy to that information on why we would deploy in certain areas. That I'm not privy to that information. Maybe if I was top secret or SCI or something like that, but that's not the case. I just know I'm there to do a certain task that my job that I do in the military entails me to do. That's my only mission. I don't really consider all the negativity in the media as far as what's going on politically or socially in my actual community. But I have heard nothing really but negative things, like, oh, you shouldn't go deploy, or like before I joined the Marine Corps, I have family members that would say, oh, piss your bed like every night and then they'll send you home, because they didn't want me to be a part of the armed forces. And I guess back then that would be some type of indication of mental health, because you're always, you know, repeatedly, you know, eliminating yourself in your bed. But I guess that's pretty much my perspective. There's never really been anything positive as far as the military. There's always something negative, but there are a lot of positives with the military. Like you meet a lot of different people, a lot of good leaders, a lot of bad leaders. Like with that, you still gain knowledge and a different perspective from being stationed here at home. At home, you just meet, I want to say meet regular people, but you don't interact with them. It's a different type of relationship.
Okay.
And you are a different version of yourself in the military versus what you are in your civilian life. And you have to weigh both the positive and negatives of both sides. You have a different role in each one of those relationships. You can't always be that same person.
That's right.
So I try not to think too much on the negative part. I always try to think on what I'm doing for my unit and for my mission in regards to my military affiliation.
Okay, thank you for that. As the school certifying official, sometimes I am privy to those students who are taking a leave of absence from their studies for deployment purposes, okay? For those students, and I do have some students on this panel, and Robert, you recently deployed and have returned. What are some of the challenges that you might imagine, because I don't know if you were in school while you were gone, but what types of challenges might you imagine that a deployed soldier would have with balancing school, work, and family during deployment?
So from my perspective, throwing school into that mix, it's very detrimental. It's already enough to balance work and family. I think throwing school in that mess, and also depends on the environment you are. The environment we were in didn't really support doing anything outside of just your job and taking care of your family. So I do think that like being in school and deploying, you definitely need to take a break. One thing at a time, you know, because it's already a lot going on a deployment.
And it's so funny that you would say that, Captain Ogan, because, and I'm calling it the new Army, because when I was in, we did a lot of, Annette, what were those?
Correspondence courses.
Correspondence courses. We did so many of those to gain and earn enough points to be promoted to the next rank. Right. But now college and higher education is so acceptable. In fact, the American College on Education, they've met with Department of Defense to go over just mapping how careers in the military match to careers in civilian life that also impact getting ranked, being promoted. So it's funny that you would say that, because you would think that because education has become such an integral part of how you rank up, that it would, that at some kind of way, the military, your leadership would create some sort of balance for you to be able to juggle both. But sounds like on an individual level that it is going to really be based on the individual and what their goals are, how strong they are, what their determination or will is in meeting that goal. Any comments?
It is definitely.
I think back in our days, Jennifer, I think correspondence courses by far were more easier than attending classes today online.
Sure. Because
you could do them at your own pace,
mm-hmm.
and you didn't have deadlines to meet, or you didn't have an end of course date to meet.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't understand how I could have ever attended school on any of my deployments, because we never had days off.
Mm-hmm.
I think on the last one for OIF, we went to work at 12 o'clock on Sundays. That was our time.
So for a few students whom I know have deployed here from Coppin, they've been 4.0 students in deployment. Now, maybe bullets weren't flying over their heads, but the fact that they were, I don't want to say torn away, but had to leave their life as they knew it to go somewhere, to learn something new, to do jobs around the clock many times, they were still able to manage 4.0s. I had a brother that went to Afghanistan when it first popped off, earned a degree from UMUC, bullets flying overhead and everything, just crazy war stuff going on. Still able to get those degrees. So I'm wondering if it also
it's
becomes
definitely
a part of
determination.
coping. Okay, got you. Go ahead,
It's
Robert.
definitely a determination, and it is a part of coping, because
mm-hmm.
I think as a result, you kind of use that as your self-care. Because if you don't have any goals, if you don't have any motivations, because you can lose motivation with your unit very easily. It could be a small situation. You can lose all motivation for wanting to be there. But if you have an outlet that can motivate you to do something else, then
mm-hmm.
9 times out of 10 that happens. Like with my deployment in Poland, I probably could have done some schooling since COVID came and knocked everything out of the surface. But if COVID wouldn't have hit, I probably wouldn't have had that time. If anything, I would be using whatever little personal time I had to complete any courses or assignments there have you that I need to complete for my degree. But yeah, it definitely had to be your determination. Has to be you got to have the mindset,
mm-hmm.
And you definitely have to have the support as well. It's all good to be supportive of yourself and have self-determination, but you also need that community support as well. You can never really do anything by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You always need that extended hand or those fellow people that's around you to help support you towards that goal. Because it's most people, it's very easy to give up on yourself, especially if you feel as though you're by yourself.
Thank you for that, Robert.
Determination, based off your strengths, perspectives, a lot of things.
Anyone else?
I think a lot of that. I think a lot of that too may have to do with rank, because I mean, when I was deployed, I would have soldiers, and I mean, they would read like a book a day, but I never had time to do that because of all the responsibilities. So I think you know, for me to read a book in a week, that was doing good because of everything that was going on. But I really think that deals how much you can get done. And I'm saying that's a good thing if you could take your courses, and the soldier and your brother who had a 4.0 is fantastic. But I think it depends on your level of responsibility and where you are in the chain of command as to how much you can get done on deployments.
Well, thank you for that. Captain Ogan, we're going to hear from you, and then I'm going to see, I think we might have a couple questions in the chat. So go ahead, David.
Yes. So this is different. If it's garrison active duty, then yes, I'd be advocating for it being a determination thing. But on deployment, honestly, from my perspective, it is not something I would recommend at all. And I'm speaking strictly from a infantry perspective. You don't have time, and trying to create this free time that you have to go to school is just not healthy. It really isn't, at least from my perspective. Now, if there are folks that are doing that, then great. But I don't want it to be a mindset conversation, because honestly, if you just don't have the time, then you just don't have your time. You know, it's better to focus on one thing at a time than multiple things at a time, if that makes sense, especially when your life is on the line.
Yeah, for sure.
I also think that, I'm sorry, this is one more thing I want to add, that many of the courses they give you for going up in rank should be geared to something other than leadership. Many of the courses they give you are leadership based, but a lot of your credits that you receive, that you transfer, like when I think when I came to Capt, I might have transferred over maybe 64 credits, and I think they were all from the Marine Corps, from courses that I took online. But there isn't any like actual instruction or what courses that a soldier or a Marine or airman should take, you know, prior to you know, if they ever leave the military. There's always just the courses mandated for that rank, and that rank or that job doesn't always transfer over to a job that is adequate to what they have in the armed forces. There's always something less than. Like for my inventory management, even though I was the manager and the supervisor for my program, that job only transferred to me becoming a cashier or a cashier or a stocker at like a Walmart. It's not equivalent. It doesn't.
So, and I hear what you're saying, Robert, and you raise a really good point. But if you become more familiar with the American Council on Education, they would take that military training, because that's highly skilled training. That's how they classify that. They find ways to convert that training into college credits. So just like you're returning back, right? You should have a military transcript. You should forward that to Records and Registration and to your academic area. And what happens is we review that content and we try to figure out, well, where does this fit? And can we award college credits for that experience? So they are now more aware, and they see the value in taking that training that the soldier has already received, okay? And how we now can convert that to advance you to a degree completion quicker. Now, going out to get a job on your own, sure, it may translate into that. But if you're thinking about pursuing a degree in higher education, especially if it's along the same lines, it definitely does have value. And we figured that out for you, okay? So in our chat here, Dr. Burley asked a question, which was the next question I was going to ask everybody. Who do you feel struggled the most during a deployment? The service member, the spouse, the children, or the dog? Anybody?
That's a tough question.
Very controversial.
I would be biased and say the service member, but the service member don't show it to the family members or the spouse or the dog. But then I would also say the children. And I'm not saying this from experience, I'm saying it from the experiences that I have seen, because I've seen some children have some really bad anxiety, separation anxiety when their parents deploy. And as a result, I've seen the parents cry, which I didn't think I had ever would see in any of some of the service members that I saw cry about the way their children were doing. So I think it's kind of a double-edged sword between the family and the service member, depending on where they are in their family dynamics.
Yep, I 100% agree. I tend to, I think everyone struggles differently. Family and service members, they all have different struggles. Me being on deployment does not mean undermine what my wife is going through on a daily basis. And when we start comparing struggles, then it's not healthy. So for me, what I do is I always try to find at least one fun thing. You know, no matter how bad of a day you have, at least one fun thing's going to happen. And I try to always communicate that because when I was deployed, I was very new into my marriage, so we hadn't really figured out how to communicate just yet. But I try to do where I would tell my wife at least one funny thing that happened and kind of ease the tension of, you know, my physical presence not being there. I remember this more specific like this. There was a time at 04 in the morning, I had to go to a motor pool in a location in Thailand. And what Thailand had was these wild dogs just running all over the place. So it's 04, you know, I had to go alone to the motor pool because I just had to get some confirmation on some vehicles. And I remember thinking, you know, I was walking down there and I saw like a pack of like 8 dogs and it was just standing there. And I remember thinking, I'm like, you know, these dogs are kind of close. And I kept getting closer to the vehicle. As I got in the vehicle, the dogs started getting closer in the pack. And I remember thinking, I was like, okay, these dogs are getting really, really close. And I had to clamp up top the vehicle because the dogs just kept coming closer and they just circled around the vehicle. And you don't want those dogs to bite you because they all have rabies. So that I remember after that, I was there for about an hour. And I remember telling my wife that. And I was like, hey, this morning, you're not going to believe what happened. And that kind of eased the tension. And every day I'd find something funny to just tell her about whatever is going on in my deployment. Now, granted, more things didn't go my way over the course of the day. But that's for me to go through. That's my journey, right? I try to make sure that my wife, you know, understands that it's not all bad out here. You know, there's still fun things happening. Yeah. And that helped with the transition for her. I gave her peace of mind.
Thank you for that, David. So listen, I want to go back because in addition to that question that I asked, and Dr. Burley actually had that embedded in her post, I want to read her post so that you all could more accurately respond, okay? So several of my best friends from high school were military brats. All 3 of them moved away 1 year before graduation. As a result of their parents' deployment, that's why they moved away. Okay, I was absolutely devastated. At that time, my parents didn't understand why I was so upset. Having 3 best friends move away at the same time, was similar to loss due to death. This was in the 80s, well before social media and FaceTime. Deployment is difficult for the family but also for the friends of the children, particularly younger ones. Fortunately, we all reconnected and we are still best friends to this day over 30 years later. My question is, What are your thoughts about the effects of deployment on children and the friends of the children? How can the school system or other entities address these ancillary effects of deployment on mental health? I'm sorry, my light keeps going out. Did you all understand what she was asking? The impact of deployment on the friends of these deployed children, because more than just families are left behind, friends who become essentially extended family get left behind too. Yes. Anybody like to respond?
Well, I can't speak from experience, but I did have a lot of interaction with families during my military service, and deployments are really hard, as I stated a minute ago, on the children. And unfortunately, when you have dual military spouses, like I have had in my first 3 deployments, where both military personnel had to deploy, the children more than likely have to go somewhere. And in most cases, it was not in most cases, it was a requirement to have a family care plan just for that situation. When you call to deploy, that person will step in as your family member to assume total care of those kids, whether it be in their home or they take the children to their home. So that did happen quite often, and it's a sad situation. I don't think during my time there was really nothing to prepare for it or to prepare children. I hope there is today, but I would look at that almost as a permanent change of station with children, because military children who go to military Department of Defense schools, they form a really close bond because it's a tight-knit, closed community. So they get to know each other very well, and they're around each other all the time because most times they live together and they go to school together. So when they PCS, often they lose that connection that they have to that person. So hopefully, like you said today, they have the social media and cell phones to help keep that connection going. But back when I was in the military, the children pretty much just changed where they were, and there wasn't an outlet.
Yeah, you raise a very good point there, Lieutenant Colonel Brown. I can remember now a dependent. I can remember another dependent family who used to do a really good job. I love when I get these year in review letters from friends throughout the year, down through the years, where they go in and they write and they do a pictorial and they share with you everything they've done. That happened for me with a few of my friends in the military, but that takes some extra caring and some wanting to stay connected on both parties, families, for that to happen. But I do believe that children suffer gravely, and the older they get, to Dr. Burley's point, the older you get, those relationships, that's where you form a lot of those lasting relationships. You're talking about high school. I've seen families sometimes break apart where the service member go on to the next duty station, leave the family behind because the kids don't want to leave their high schools. They don't want to leave their best friends. So Dr. Burley, you would not have been left alone in 2000, 2000, 2005, 2010, because those kids are really driving how that family deploy, basically, especially if they're in high school. I want to stay here because it's time for me to go to college and I want to do this. I can't really form relationships or people get to know me and write me letters of recommendations if we hopping all over the place. So, kids are starting to have a little bit more say now in some of that military deployment between families. So very good point, Dr. Burley. Thank you for that. I have another question here.
Can I make one last comment? It'll just take a second, because yes. I've known families who left their children with other families to finish the high school.
Yep. Yes. I've seen that too. Here's another one. When I served, okay, this is from Dr. Who is this from? Because I think it was sent to me from someone else. When I served, race played a major role in what I could and couldn't do. Have any of the panelists experienced this? Also, how did they manage the intersectionality of being woman, woman and man, and of color?
I'll start this one because I kind of have to leave in a few. Yes, race is definitely plays a role. I would say from my experience, as a matter of fact, just a much more recent experience is the Secretary of the Army coming out to say, hey, if you guys have, opinions about what's going on currently, it's okay to talk about them. He took the Secretary of the Army to come out and say, hey, it's okay to talk about these things. Like, you guys are human beings. So that alone tells you what's going on. So I think from my perspective, yes, there's definitely, it's not blatant, it's more subtle and embedded into the system, but you notice differences. Between me and my peers, I always have to do about maybe at least twice the work they do to get the same recognition they would get for doing less. That's very much a thing. I had my platoon for 16 months. In that time we had 4 live fires, which we were number 1. We didn't have any administrative actions, the only platoon in the battalion. We had the top squad leaders 1, 2, 3, 4 in my platoon. And I still struggled with rating against my peers who had not even half of that in their platoon. So now, performance as a platoon leader, flawless. But my other counterparts, I've noticed that they got away with more things just based on the environment they were in. Some of the things, if my counterpart did something and I did something, the consequences would be completely different. It would kind of be like, okay, we want to make one of them a scapegoat, and we're going to make a scapegoat. Okay. So yes, definitely, I would say it played a role. As far as being man or woman, I would say I've noticed that the African American women that I've worked with, they have it worse. I would say being a woman, that's one, and being an African American in the Army. So when I say I have to work twice as hard, they have to work 4 times as hard to get the same recognition of privileges that their counterparts would have. It's very difficult for a Black woman in the military. And it's difficult for us Black folks as a whole, but especially as an African American woman, yeah, it gets difficult. Getting told like your hair is not a regulation, just little things like that, like harassment, not taking sexual harassment seriously, calling people soft for wanting to be addressed appropriately. It's just I've seen it, and it's a lot worse for the African American woman.
Lieutenant Jackson kind of wanted to jump in, David. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. This conversation is flowing so good, y'all. I think we need another hour. Lieutenant Jackson.
I'm going to agree with David that African American women in the military do have it harder. From personal experience, I do find that I'm always having to prove myself, despite my degree, despite my license, despite my commission. The hair thing is something that has kind of evolved, and I'm glad that it has changed over time, but still, just like the Army taking a step to acknowledge the fact that our hair is different and that we can't just wear it in a tight bun, or, and it's different. Our hair texture is different. We can't, there's certain things or styles that they want us to do. It's not good for us, in long term. So I think the Army is doing at least a decent job in moving forward and acknowledging that we there's something different about us, you know. Also, as far as going against the women in the Army or military in general, going against the men in the Army, like I said, we always have to prove ourselves over and over. Like we have to go 3 times as hard, you know, because we're Black and we're female. And then I do feel social media and some of the reality shows play a role in this, right? Because their view of African American women, despite how far we come, is what they see on Love and Hip Hop or Basketball Wives, Real Housewives of Atlanta, the yelling, the screaming. Even when I went to Advance Camp or LDAC, if you may be familiar with that too, what the name it may change to now, is that they think we're loud, they think we're ghetto, they think that we always have an attitude, when in actuality we're just trying to point out something, and it's because the tone may be, oh, she's ghetto or she's spicy, or you know, to comments like that, you know, and that's not it. That's not it at all. So I agree with Ogan.
Any other
I
comments?
like to chime in on this because I'm glad Brittany, and I'm so proud of Brittany and David because I knew them when they were students, so I'm just so proud of them. But I like to say that I'm glad Brittany said that we have to work 3 times as hard, because it's true. And every time you start a new job, you have to start over with proving yourself. It doesn't carry over. You have to start every new job that way, improving yourself. And when Jennifer and I were in the military, you know, there was no way we could show our culturalism. You know, I had a Black officer that was higher up than me tell me, don't put your hair in. We could only have 2 braids in our hair at that time. He said, don't cornrow your hair. Don't put cornrows in your hair because it's too ethnic. Or anything having to do with culturalism, you couldn't show it. You had to subdue it. I'm happy to hear about the new hairstyles because I had been keeping up with that, but I still think the Army has a long way to go.
Yes.
If you look at a lot of the old propaganda from when I came into the military, or you look at some old commercials, there's no women in them. There's no ethnic groups in them. They're just old white males, the good old boy system in those propagandas. We have a really long way to go to bring it up to reflect what today's society reflects.
Yes, thank you for that. Thank you for that. All right, I have another comment to read that has a couple questions attached. Okay, from Dr. O'Brien. I didn't know there was even a place and time for having both parents deployed. These last wars have caused havoc on the children, and as a counselor in the K-12 system, I've seen the hurt and worked with children. Has there ever been consideration for not deploying both parents at the same time? I would like to respond to that, and the panelists can certainly join in. Like I stated before, I was a soldier first, and then I became a dependent. The reason, Dr. O'Brien, that I became a dependent is because during Desert Storm, they wanted to deploy me and my husband. I had a 2-year-old, okay? I was at Fort Riley, Kansas. Neither of the in-laws were able to take her because they were still raising young children themselves. And maybe they were already in mode, but they just couldn't, not at that time. And so my family, my husband and I had to make a decision. The decision was for me to be chaptered out of the military. That was the only way that I could get out of going to the war, was to just quit my job, basically. And that was the official way of quitting my job. And luckily for me, because I had no disciplinary actions in my record, they could allow me to quit under honorable conditions. So I was discharged from the military with an honorable discharge. That served me good going forward. But that is the only way that you could really get out of it. Unless that job was not a job that was going to be required in that conflict that was going on, you had to go. Or say, had I been pregnant, I would not have had to deploy. They would have left me in the rear because I could not deploy as a pregnant soldier. But because that was not my current situation, I had to now officially quit my job. I don't know if they are giving any consideration. Maybe Captain Ogan can speak to this, maybe if he knows. It's an HR question for sure. If consideration is being given for that, because again, when you sign up, you pretty much know what you're signing up for. And so that comes with both parents being deployed a lot of times because both of them signed up, you know, individually, maybe not even together. Yeah. Anyone else might have a comment there?
I'd like to make a comment about what you just said, because when I was in the military and you had a single parent or a dual military couple, it was a requirement to have a family care plan to say what you would do with your children in case you had to deploy. There was no ands, if or buts about it. And if you didn't have that plan, that was automatic reason to put you out of the military.
I don't know if that's a thing now. I hope not. To alleviate somebody of their service if they don't have a family care plan. They still do implement that family care plan, but I believe it to be unrealistic to actual social challenges that comes with being deployed, especially if you're a single parent or a dual parent. It's the family care plan. It's just really unrealistic to me, because you have to do it, and it's the same thing with whenever you come back from deployment. You don't get an exact assessment of each family to understand what resources they actually have. So they have you fill out this information for your family care plan, and you put it in a folder, but you'll probably never even see that family care plan again because they don't have you complete another one because it got lost or they can't find it, what have you. There needs to be a new system put in place because the family care plan system does not work. Mm-hmm. It really does not, because it doesn't comprehend the challenges that comes with life. Exactly. Like you can give them a number to a family member that could take care of your kids or your other obligations, but what happens when that person can no longer do those duties? Mm-hmm. There's no plan for that.
I would have to disagree with you on some level, because in the situation that I spoke about with my dual military couples, it worked very well. Their parents came before they deployed to have that transition time with them to care for their children. And when they left, they took the children back to their home to care for them. So, I mean, unfortunately and fortunately, the onus is on the service member to make sure they have an effective family care plan. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And once it is implemented, it's pretty much it was looked at like a contract.
Right. To both of your points, I would have to say that I can agree on either side, because if the family isn't functional and they don't have that support system, then it's going to be what Robert said. And then Annette, what you said for those that really do have a support system in place. But look, our conversation is coming to a close, but I need to get one more question in, and it's going to be for you, Ms. Brown, because I need to hand off to Dr. Jones, who's going to bring us some remarks regarding our presentation today. So for you, as a veteran and the senior most serving person on the panel, what advice do you have for emerging leaders, for those listening to us talking now, because they're coming up in the ranks? What advice do you have, Annette, for those coming up behind you and I and our other viewing audience who have been doing this for a while?
Well, there's a couple of things. The first thing I would say is whatever you pursue, give it your all. Just go overboard, because you have nothing to lose. You know, I don't think when I was a student at Morgan and in the Bear Battalion, I didn't give it my all. So I really didn't start applying myself until I actually got into the military. I wish I had had more cultural training prior to going into the military, because coming from an HBCU into the military, which is the good old boy system, is a totally different world. I think I would have been better prepared had I had some of that training or interaction prior to getting in the military. I believe the sky's the limit. We have a long way to go, no doubt, but there are opportunities out there. I would recommend that emerging leaders take advantage of the educational systems that the military offers. There's lots of them in the medical, law, and logistics field, and that's how I got my master's. I was on active duty, and that time was allotted to go to pursue my master's degree while in the military. And try to have fun, because it's so serious. You know, the military is a serious business, especially as a career person. You can kind of get lost in it and lose yourself. Stay true to yourself. Always be honest. Never doubt or put your integrity at risk, because once you do, you can't lose it, or you can't get it back. And do a good job and give it your all.
Thank you for that. Thank you, panelists. I'm going to hand this discussion off to Dr. Jones. Dr. Jones?
Yes, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. We just want to thank our military personnel who serve in our nation and across the globe for your service, sacrifices that you have demonstrated on today. And the Black Family Series thus far has been provoking, challenging, and shed light on misconceptions as relates to the Black family. We know that the Black family is so diverse, but on today, we had the opportunity to hear the lived experiences of HBCU graduates, social workers, our panelists, our moderator, public health specialists. So we're thankful for your expertise and your time in service. We know that the military was one of the first institutions that was desegregated in the USA. And that comes with a lot of questions. And so how far have we really come as relates to the military in our society? The impact of military and the deployment of Black family comes with challenges as well as successes, which are worth our time and investment. The Black family, like I said earlier, is so diverse. And today we learn that gender, race are all factors help-seeking behaviors. We heard that people in the military, not everyone, feel comfortable going to see the chaplain. Sounds familiar? In our society, many Black families love going to church or a faith leader rather than seeking a mental health specialist. And so we have work to do. Progress has happened, but we have work to do. This is Social Work Month, as well as Women's History Month. And I'm going to end with a quote as it relates to gender, to celebrate and uplift Black women. The most disrespected person in America is the Black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the Black woman. The most neglected person in America is the Black woman. And today we lift you up and we thank you for your service. Happy Social Work Month and happy Women's History Month. Thank you.
Thank you for that commentary. Dr. Gilliam, would you like to have last words and dismiss us?
I want to say, I got to put the camera back on. You guys were so awesome. What a great panel. We just again want to say thank you for your service, for sharing with this panel. If you asked a question and you were a student, if you can please chat me your email address. Our first 3 students who asked a question are going to get a prize. We really do appreciate the participation of our audience today. This was so awesome. And so we really do want to thank you all for your service to our community, as Dr. Jones said. Ms. Harris, child, I'm gonna need you to go on and start that YouTube chat and talk about this topic. It was so good. It was so rich. There's so many other things to talk about and to share and to learn. So we want to thank you. Ms. Brown, I'm gonna need you to call us. We need some help in the social work department. I didn't know you had that social work degree. We're gonna be looking for you. We're gonna be calling on you. So again, thank you, Dr. Jones. Robert is like our social work little baby bird. We are so proud of you, Robert. And to all of the students who reached out. Miss Jennifer, who is out there working, which is the only reason why her camera wasn't on. Not only is the Black woman the most disrespected, she is the hardest working. Miss Jennifer is in that hospital doing her work and protecting her clients, and that anonymity. At the same time, we appreciate you all. We thank everybody for joining us. I have class that started at 3 o'clock, so my students are logged on to class, so I have to go. Enjoy your day, stay safe, wear a mask, get your vaccine. And until we are able to do this again in person, thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Kelly. Thank you,
Bye.
Robert, in the background. We appreciate you.
The panelists, if you can, email me your mailing addresses, all panelists. Thank you. Bye-bye.